What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of Nerd Vibes. Today, we are going to be talking about Ninja Kamui and solo leveling. And then we're going to take a bit of a detour, and I'll get to what the detour is a little bit later. And then, to finish out the episode, we are going to just be talking full-on X-Men. And X-Men 97 dropped. The first two episodes, I watched them. I'm going to let you guys know what I think about it. Plus, I did a rewatch of the old X-Men series and just watching some key episodes. I watched the first couple seasons and then kind of skipped around and watched some key episodes towards the back end. So I'll let you know what I thought about that as well. And then in that middle section, I'll get to that. Why it's a bit of a detour from what we were going to talk about. But stick around. We're going to talk about Ninja Kamui and then solo leveling. So, Ninja Kamui. We talked about it on last episode, and I wanted to bring it back into this episode because we just got episodes 5 and 6 since we last recorded. By the time this goes up, episode 7 will have premiered, so you guys will be able to see that. But I want to talk about episode 5 and 6 overall, not necessarily a recap, just overall my feelings on how I'm feeling about Ninja Kamui just as a story so far. I've integrated it into the anime watching streams. So it's that good that we had to put it on to rotation for that. I'm current with it. I watch it every week now. The storyline is great. The characters are amazing. The twists and the turns are I don't want to say they're super surprising or anything like that, but they're unexpected for sure. And not done for shock value, but to honestly progress the story forward in a real smart way. The integration of the technology with the fighting styles that some of the characters have, the uniqueness of the characters so far, and all their different techniques, their looks, their speech patterns, their personalities, just all in general. It's just amazingly done, to be honest. It's very refreshing to see an anime done in this way, and for it to be received the way it's been received. As far as I can tell, it's been nothing but positive reviews. And our main character, Higan, is a man of little words, but is very intelligent, is very how do I say this? Very tactically brilliant. So he, in terms of his battle prowess, he's very not very accepting of help, as we see in episode 6. He's very distrustful of his new companion, or his I don't want to say companion, but his new cohort, because spoiler alert for any Ninja Kamui stuff if you didn't already know. His benefactor is what they call it, is revealed, and so now they're in a situation together. So I'm not going to be super spoily about it. I don't want to get really into recapping like that. I just want to go with my overall thoughts, so you guys can go watch the show for yourselves. But the integration of the technology, like I said, is very satisfying in terms of the battle style. I don't feel like the technology to this point has been overwhelming, but it has been additive in a real positive way. I could see in a story that's called Ninja Kamui, the introduction of technology and the way that they've done it could take away from that type of storyline that you think you're getting. but it's set up in a way to where it makes sense. So I like that. You get more character depth with our main character Higan in episode 6 with the reveal of his benefactor. So that's amazing character development there with our main character. And it's not from him because that's not his character to speak on his situation. You get more character development of our main character from the other fringe characters around him, and their experiences with him develops him as a character. And I like that, as opposed to being just told, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I'm seeing this situation. You're kind of like on that emotional journey with Higan, and him finding out this information that he's finding out the same time you guys kind of are seeing his reaction and getting to go on that emotional journey with him is just amazing storytelling, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Again, they have this character who is a villain. They have this character, African American guy, and he every time he's on the screen, he's like checking his haircut, checking his fit before he's getting ready to go fight. And I think that that's super unique, and it's super quirky and funny about his character. There's this other shorter villain guy who's very perverted, and you get that when he's fighting in his fighting style. He very shows that off. There's a couple of other of the villainous characters that have distinct personalities. We just haven't really seen them yet. And then you have the big boss guy who doesn't say anything. I don't think he's said more than 20 words the entire 5-6 episodes that we've seen so far, but he's just running things. And that guy is scary. Without saying anything, he's scary. But everyone seems to be very aware of who Higan is, but they're not aware of his abilities, which is why they're still chasing him. But they're aware of how skilled he is, which is why they are approaching him in the way that they're approaching him. And especially after they have sent people and the damage that he's done. So they're just being more and more and more cautious, which is why episode 5, he gets kind of caught up and he has to get saved. And that's why episode 6 happens. But episode 6 plays out the way it plays out in a very, very, very cool way. And I'm just very excited for episode 7, the way episode 6 played out, how Higan is getting his upgrades so that he can stay on the level of his opponents. And it's very amazing to see. It's very nice to see. And I just wanted to speak very, very highly of this anime right now. I think the story is taking a lot of twists and turns that are unexpected, but when you look back at the story, it makes a lot of sense. So it's not like you're getting blindsided with these reveals. You also have the secondary plot of the FBI agent, investigating his side of the story, what he knows, and now the FBI turning on him. So you have that subplot with him and him being close to retirement. It's always a cop close to retirement in these kind of stories, which I find, and also an interesting kind of plot device. But besides the point, you have that subplot going on as well. So I'm just really excited at where this anime is going and how it's doing. So we're just gonna keep watching it, and I'll keep updating you guys on how it's going. So let's get on to Solo Leveling. All right, we're back. So I wanted to talk about Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths, but again, as I was doing my research, I found just can't do it, because now I found that it's part of a larger timeline. And now that I found out it's part of a larger timeline, of course, I have to indulge in the entire timeline before I get to the end, right? So, this is the announcement I wanted to make. We are going to start a Nerd Vibes, Arm Dark Mamba, whatever, watch along for the DC animated timeline of the Tomorrowverse, starting with Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Okay, so by the time next episode comes out, we're going to have watched Superman, Man of Tomorrow, and then go from there. We're going to watch the subsequent films: Justice Society, World War II, Batman the Long Halloween, Part 1 and Part 2, Green Lantern, Beware My Power, Legion of Superheroes, Justice League World War, and then Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, 2, and hopefully Part 3 will be out by that time, and we'll be able to finish it up. If not, we'll watch Part 3 when it's available. Part 2, I believe, is coming out in April of this year, so it should be coming out pretty soon here. But yeah, we're going to watch all of the films, okay? We're going to talk about them, watch them in order, and talk about them on the next podcast. So right now is the announcement. You have 2 weeks to watch Superman, Man of Tomorrow to be caught up. And then the second part of the announcement is I'm announcing the email for Nerd Vibes Podcast, where you can send your questions, comments, concerns, critiques, anything like that. nerdvibescast@gmail.com. Okay? nerdvibescast@gmail.com. That's where you're going to send all your questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. I'm going to read those, answer those on the podcast when we get them. Okay? Also, when we start doing our advice section, that's where you're going to send the advice. Okay? All that stuff. But that's going to be, we'll talk about that on a different episode. But first, I want to talk about this Tomorrowverse. Okay? Supposedly, the Tomorrowverse takes place after, it takes place after the successor of the DC animated universe, and the last movie in that universe was the Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, which is in 2020. Okay, so that's the last movie in that timeline, and then the new Superman movie is his first movie in the new timeline. Okay, so we're all starting fresh. That's why we're watching the Superman movie first, because if it wasn't for that, I would not watch this movie. Again, I've stated, not a Superman fan. But Superman, the film we're going to watch, is the Superman origin story told in a different way. I've read about it. I'm going to watch it. We'll do a review on it. But it is the first movie, so it sets up the whole animation style for the way the rest of the films are going to be animated, with slight differences based on time period and character. So obviously Batman's going to be animated a little bit differently than Superman is going to be animated, and Gotham is going to be animated a little bit differently than Metropolis would be animated, for instance. And then in the second film, which is, I believe, the World War II film, the World War II time period is going to be animated a little bit differently than the current time period that the rest of the films will be taking place. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. But for the most part, the animation is going to stay pretty consistent, and the first movie is going to set that up. But yeah, so we get the Superman origin story in the first one. I don't know what the second movie is about. And then the third and fourth movies are going to be Batman. We get the Green Lantern origin in that one, which I believe I watched that one already. I I believe I watched that, which is Green Lantern Beware My Power, because I'm obviously, you know, you see my guy right there, Green Lantern. He's my favorite superhero. Um, Not this particular one because this is the John Stewart incarnation, and my favorite incarnation is Hal Jordan. But whatever. It is a Green Lantern property, so I watched it, I believe, already. But we're gonna watch it again. And then Legion of Superheroes is a superhero team from the future that consists of Supergirl, Brainiac 5, I believe his name is, and some other characters. So that's a futuristic based one. But that's all, um, those kind of things. Just giving you guys a little bit of uh, prior knowledge that I have for these properties going forward. So I'm excited to see this one. And to know that it's kind of coming to an end is also pretty cool as well. Each movie is about, yeah, is probably going to be less than 2 hours, hour and a half most for most of these movies. Most of the movies are going to be pretty simple A plot that is going to carry on throughout this. Uh, the A plot is what's going to carry throughout the movies. You know, it may be subtle, a subtle plot, but it's going to be the plot that's going to carry throughout the whole 10 movie run. And then the B plot is the movie specific, one. So like whatever Superman is going to be handling in that movie. And then you also have the C plot, which is probably going to be the alternate plot that also happens in the movie. So you get generally the way the DC movies work and why they're so good is they have a very specific model, which is you get initial story setup, antagonist. I hope I'm using that right. You have our MC and then the opponent. I think it's antagonist, whatever. Protagonist, antagonist, whatever. But the villain, okay? And then, hero defeats villain. Villain comes back or introduces bigger villain. Hero has to take out newer villain, and then realization, wrap up, all that kind of deal. These movies, pretty simple in the structure, uh, but they do get deeper in storytelling, which I do like. I'm hoping that this Superman movie has a new spin on his origin or his rogue gallery being his villain set, something like that. Uh, Something to spice Superman up just in general because Superman does not excite me as a character. I heard Batman: The Long Halloween is a really good movie, so I'm excited to see those. And some of these movies I hadn't even heard until doing the research for Crisis on Infinite Earth. So I hope you guys will join me in watching the first movie, which is the Superman Man of Tomorrow. And by next episode, we can all have some discussion about the show or the movie, excuse me, about the movie, and go from there. And if you guys want to have even a more lively discussion quicker than the next podcast within the next 2 weeks, you can follow me on Twitch at ArmDarkMamba or on TikTok, Instagram, and hit the DMs or come into the chat, whatever, and ask me a question and we can talk about it. Because I'm excited to embark on this journey into the Tomorrowverse and see how it goes with DC, this run of DC animated films. I love DC animated films. They're usually really, really good. And hopefully this doesn't let me down. So we're going to end the discussion about why we're not doing Justice League on Infinite Earths and taking a detour into the Tomorrowverse as a whole, as opposed to just the one movie. And we're going to now shift our discussion to the X-Men, all of them, from the 90s to the this week. We're going to talk about it all on the other side of this break. All right, so I first want to talk about X-Men, the animated series, the original one, kind of what I thought watching it back as an adult now, looking at it from a more analytical viewpoint instead of a nostalgic one, and then going into, after we talk about the original, what I thought, all that kind of stuff, then we'll talk about the X-Men 97 version in comparison, and then what I thought they did right, and then some of the changes that they made, things of that nature. All right. So, first, X-Men animated series, the original one. I watched seasons 1 through 3, I want to say, and then I skipped around 4 and 5 just because I was pressed for time at that point. So, one thing I wanted to point out is that over the original run, the animation style over the 5 seasons does change over time to where you get to that final episode of season 5 and it is closer to the animation that we see in X-Men 97 than I thought it would be. I remember the animation being more closer to the season 1 animation all throughout than it was in season 5, so that was kind of shocking for me to see on the rewatch, the animation change over the time. Another thing, the original animated series had some really, really high level storylines and themes in it, um, having to deal with the mutants substituting for the African American community, at times substituting for the Jewish community in some of these storylines. And what I mean by that is you can sub in the what the X-Men are going through to something similar that happened to those communities in a real life situation. Um, that's what I mean by that. So once you go back and look at it, there are some really high level situations having to deal with that. Once you kind of really sit back and dissect it, um, there's also the very, very, very uncomfortable love triangle between Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean, especially in seasons 1 through 3. Um, the sexual tension is very high between those three characters. Obviously, Jean and Cyclops are in a relationship, but there is implications throughout, and I believe at one point, uh, Wolverine and Jean hook up. Um, but if they don't, it is definitely alluded to that they had a previous relationship when Cyclops was not around. So the sexual tension there is very high between those three characters. And then you have in the original, still, we're still talking the original, the Rogue and Gambit kind of love connection in that one, um, which is there's always a lot of sexual tension in that one, especially the way uh, Rogue's character is portrayed, very sexualized, very voluptuous character drawn. She's very well known for that in the 90s. There was a lot of kids my age who was like, Rogue, what up? What up, though? And that was like, Rogue was one of my first animated girl crushes. She was strong, very nice build, super sweet in terms of like her character, personality, like had a power that was amazing, you know. But I digress. Anyway, so you have the Gambit and Rogue. Sorry about that rant. So you have the Gambit and the Rogue um, relationship that is very up and down. roller coaster ride in that one. You get the Jubilee being how do I say this? The you get Jubilee being the opposite of the adult in the room, which is the kid in the room, and I don't know if that's the right expression, but obviously you have all these very serious characters, Cyclops, Wolverine, Jean, all these serious characters, right? And then you have Jubilee here, who is just like the kid on this team of adults trying to fight, the mutant scrutiny and persecution and all that kind of stuff. And she just is a girl who's in her teens trying to control her powers and trying to have fun and enjoy her life, right? So she brings the levity and sometimes the comedic relief, and also um, sometimes the stakes, because she is the kid, so she is the one that has to be looked out for the most. So you have that going on as well. Storm in the original series is often not used to her fullest potential. She often gets severely depowered in the original series by way of either being knocked out, being put into a small space, because it is a known weakness of Storm's that she's claustrophobic. So sometimes they'll just put her in a very tight box and she's just done because she's claustrophobic. Anything having to do with psychic powers, she's kind of out because of the Soul King storyline having to do with the astral plane, all that kind of stuff. Um, so Storm is very up and down as a character. She's very powerful as a character, but sometimes she's either not in the fight, or if she is in the fight, sometimes they have to take her out very early just so that the fight's a little bit more even. In the original series, I found that kind of happened. Um, then Professor Xavier is more absent than I remembered in the first 3 seasons. He spent most of season 2 in the Savage Land with Magneto. Didn't realize he was gone for that long. Pretty much the whole season. Like, he would get random check-ins, but I meant like gone away from the team. So that was something that was really weird. But it, it, I mean, I didn't mind it, honestly. At times, I forgot he was even part of the story. I found the Savage Land portion of the story to be, the Savage Land check-ins to kind of be a little boring, except for when they tied in back with the X-Men. That was okay. But other than that, I didn't really care for that storyline too much. And then at the end with, we're going to skip to the end because we're going to transition into X-Men 97, the reboot right here. Um, at the very last episode where Charles Xavier dies, I want to say that was maybe the third time I'd ever seen that episode, if not the second. I remember way more the episodes in the first 3 seasons than I do the episodes in seasons 4 and 5. 5 in particular, when I was looking around at it. But again, I watched the last episode of the original series right before I watched the first episode of X-Men 97, and the animation from the last episode of the original to the first episode of 97 was just like amazing. They got it perfectly right. So at the beginning of X-Men 97, we get the intro, obviously, of that's similar to, not an exact copy, but similar to the original X-Men intro, except for this team has Bishop and Morph on it in the intro. I don't think the original had Morph on it. Definitely didn't have Bishop. But it's a similar theme. So that tugged on those heartstrings immediately from watching the last episode to the new episode. The character design of Bishop is really, really cool. It's an updated design. He doesn't have a mullet, but he has a more updated haircut look. His powers are more defined in this one. He still uses firearms, but he has kinetic absorption, so he can absorb laser blasts and things of that nature and reflect them back, which is a little bit more clear than it was in the original series, at least for me. Storm is super strong from the beginning. Like, they establish her very early as a problem of a character in terms of her strength. And then you get Jubilee, Rogue, Wolverine. You get Morph, who is taking the form of, I want to say, um, a just a blank slate of a person, just a clay. Like, he looks like a clay doll, neither male nor female, no discerning gender properties at all. That's the form he decided to take. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some other character choices they did in terms of gender, as well in this, and some other things. But my overall impressions, like, the animation looked similar but updated. And I greatly enjoyed that. Storm's character look, I enjoy the mohawk. Some people don't. I enjoy the Storm mohawk a lot. I think it's really, really cool. Everyone else looked pretty much the same. Beast looked the same. We already talked about Bishop's haircut. Everything like that. Jubilee looks the same. She didn't look the same from the season 5 character to now. They made her look more closely to her seasons 1 through 3 character design of the original than the season 5 character design. Thought that was an interesting choice, but whatever. Where do I want to go? There's so many places I want to go in this first episode. The fight scenes were done very well. I didn't see a problem with the animation during the fight scenes or during the slower moments. I've seen some discussions that the slower moments were a little bit not done well. Maybe I was looking with my nostalgia glasses, but I thought they looked fine. One thing that I noticed that they did that was very important to me, because growing up, Cyclops was my favorite X-Men character, because he was the leader, because he got the girl, all that kind of stuff. But they gave Cyclops some swag in this first episode. I don't know if it was the first episode or the second episode, but okay, spoilers, but watch the first episode. He gets ripped out of the plane. He's falling out of in the air. Rogue and Storm save the other X-Men, and as he's falling, he's like, "I'll meet you guys." Eye blast, boom, saves himself, lands. Superman pound, land, and then says the coldest line, hand on his visor, "To me, my X-Men." And on point, on cue, boom, 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 everybody lands right behind him. It was the coolest thing ever. I wrote in my notes, Cyclops swag, because he has it in this one in a way that the original series didn't give him at all. At all, at all, at all. The banter between the characters is there. I think it's a little difficult to capture that, the way the banter was done in the 90s, but I think they did a very, very good job in this one. There was also the way that they're using these characters in very unique ways, and I highlighted it with a nice team attack in my notes, where I think you see it in the trailer as well, so I'm not really spoiling anything there. But you see Gambit on Wolverine's back. Gambit uses his powers to charge Wolverine's claws, and then, which we'll talk about in a minute with Morph. Morph uses his powers to morph into the Blob, and then Wolverine jumps off of the Morph as the Blob. Used his stomach as a little trampoline bubble type deal to go off into a Sentinel with his charge claws and just boom, explodes. It was a really, really cool execution of a team attack using Gambit, Morph, and Wolverine's different power sets. I thought that was super cool. So you could automatically see the team cohesion, the chemistry that has already been built up from the original series that they just have now. Um, you see Bishop and Storm have a little bit of chemistry, but you can also tell that Bishop is newer to the team. So that's pretty cool. They also did this really cool thing, spoiler for this part, with Beast in the Sentinel attack, where Beast, since he's not necessarily a great hand-to-hand combatant, even though he is super strong and athletic and agile, he's not really suited for hand-to-hand combat personality-wise. So they had him using his technology, and where he went into a Sentinel, rewired some stuff, hopped in the middle of it, and next thing you know, he's controlling a giant Sentinel robot, taking out other Sentinels. So I thought that was a unique twist, but also true to the character of Beast. So I thought that was really awesome, especially me being a fan of mech anime. If I see someone in a giant robot, I'm in. That's just me personally. Love it. That's also just all in episode 1. Episode 2, we get Magneto coming into the picture. You get his perspective of the Professor X death that is carried on from the original series. But in the original series, it is very much left up in the air if Professor X is actually dead or not. He technically dies in the end of the original, but the Shi'ar come and say they can do some things to make sure that he's not dead. So it's kind of up in the air whether he's actually dead or not. But this show, I believe, is taking the approach that he is actually passed on and not in any way being resurrected. And if so, it would be a big reveal that I think would be at the end of this season going into the next season, if at all. Just a prediction there. But for my notes for season 2, I put Magneto was doing some good deeds, so I question if Magneto was actually good. And it seems throughout this episode that he is trying to turn over a new leaf in honor of Professor X, trying to live in a better way, not turning to violence, but instead turning to peace and quiet intimidation, I would say, is the tactic that Magneto is going with right now. He's not doing things to provoke nor retaliate, whereas in the past he would. But I think since Charles has passed and given him everything, which we'll talk about in a little bit greater detail here, he's trying to do good. And give him everything, he gave him everything. So the X-Men now follow Magneto, and that's a little bit a point of contention that's building, which I'm excited to see going forward. And with that, you have the implied relationship between Rogue and Magneto. That's going to be weird going forward. So there's a new love triangle forming between Gambit, Magneto, and Rogue, because in this iteration of the X-Men, Jean is pregnant. So she's taken off the board for Wolverine, and that love triangle is now no longer a love triangle because she's having Cyclops' baby. And at the end of episode 2, she has that baby. So that love triangle is out. So to fill that storyline from the original series, they do it with Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit. So I thought that was kind of something that they're building up to. The Phoenix Force was touched on, which is from the original series. Just thought I'd bring that up. Wasn't really mentioned anything, whatever. The Morlocks were there, you know, from the original. Just another throwback, callback there. Um, I wanted to touch on this because this was a bigger issue for me. The way they decided to do this, I thought was to the point, but also too much on the point, and you'll get what I mean by doing this. There's a conversation that happens particularly in African American homes that mothers in my experience have had with their sons. My mom had it with me, had it with my brother. Okay? And that is, mothers telling their sons, "Hey, when you go out into the world, you're looked at a little bit differently. You're treated a little bit differently because you are a African American male. Okay, it's something you need to be aware of. You just be aware of it." And my mom talked to me about how stressful it was having to have that conversation with us. You know, and I always thought about how stressful it would have been for me to have those conversations with my children if I had ever had them, you know. But yeah, so in this, the thing that bothered me, in all honesty, was you had Jean and Storm sitting down having this similar conversation where Jean, a white woman, let's be real, um, talking about her baby in being a mutant and how she was going to tell her mutant son about how he's going to be treated differently, how it's going to be like basically trying to have that talk that I just explained with you guys with her son, but having that conversation with Storm and that being an active uh, character decision as opposed to like having it with Rogue. You know what I mean? Just the particular character of Storm being there, I think was a little bit too poignant and too on the nose with what real life conversations have. And I think it was just I don't know, I just felt weird about it. It's kind of hard to explain, but in the moment watching that I was like, oh, this is weird. uh you know, it was just weird based on my personal experience. Nothing story wise was weird about it, but just seeing that was jarring for me based on my personal experience. But that's just me. And then at the end of the episode, after the huge build up from Storm being this Omega level mutant, which is the highest level classification for mutants in terms of power level, she gets nerfed. Immediately gets her powers taken away at the end of episode 2. And then we are left with a cliffhanger, just like the 90s episodes would do. Um, so, yeah, I mean, overall, I'd like to say I was pleasantly surprised with the outcome of this iteration of it. I'm happy with the animation. I'm happy with the characters and where all the characters are right now. And that brings me to Morph and Gambit. Okay, I've seen some discussions online since the premiere of the show about Gambit's perceived sexuality, him whether he's gay or straight or somewhere in the middle. And I just want to say, in my opinion and in my perception of Gambit, I always thought his sexuality was ambiguous, even going back to the original content. I always thought that Gambit was very ambiguous about, like, obviously he has feelings for Rogue. Obviously he has feelings for Rogue in particular, but that never necessarily stopped him from flirting in any type of way with other characters, whether it be male or female. And then I saw just a little bit of discussion about people having a problem with Morph's um form that he's decided to take in, because in the original series he decided to take a uh very obviously male form, whereas in this original 97 iteration he decides to take again that kind of clay genderless form, and people were kind of discussing that, and I didn't see a problem with it. I think I find it way easier to distinguish Morph, and even in the original series I felt like he would very easily flip his gender, obviously, because go to he could be any person at any time. The twist I found about Morph wasn't his the form that he decided to take, but that he somehow got powers of the people he transformed into. Like when he transformed into Archangel, he could fly. When he transformed into Blob, he had Blob's um, kind of the power of his body. So I thought that was more weird than the form that he decided to take. But I saw some discussion on that and wanted to talk about it, and I just thought it wasn't necessarily a departure from their original characters from the original series, especially watching them back to back. I didn't really see any type of issue. I thought that X-Men 97 overall out of 10 was probably like a 9.5, to be honest. And really the only nit that I could pick was I wish Storm didn't lose her powers. I mean, other than that, like great, great 2 episode premiere. It did everything I wanted it to do, probably even a little bit more, honestly. And like I said, I'm excited to keep you guys updated on how it's going, where it's going. And like I said, you guys know I've touched on X-Men a couple of times on this podcast now and what it means to me. So seeing this reboot be well received and successful, nothing short of joyous to me, I guess I should say, because the X-Men means so much to me. So X-Men 97, 9.5 out of 10 on the 2 episode premiere. When we come back, we're gonna wrap it up and end the episode. So I will see you guys on the other side of this break. All right, thank you guys for watching or listening to Nerd Vibes. It means a lot to me. Again, I want to give you guys the email that we are having for the watch along, as well as any advice, any questions, comments, uh, any type of criticism you guys want to levy at me to help improve the podcast. Go send it there. So that's nerdvibescast@gmail.com. Nerdvibescast@gmail.com. All that stuff there. You guys can also follow me on Twitch, Arm Dark Mamba, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Arm Dark Mamba, everywhere. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And again, we're gonna be watching Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Watch that by the next episode, so we can get this watch along going. Okay, love you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.